So now that you've finished going over the objective one for the study guide, we're going to begin objective two. Objective one was about determining whether something was a function, finding the domain when you're giving the range, finding the range when you're given the domain. Objective two is going to be about solving equations for y, which we did yesterday. So let's get started. Go ahead and, if you don't already have it open up to your study guide. You should have it open because hopefully you just finished objective one. But if not, open it up. And we'll start with number 7. And I think actually I will zoom in all the way. Number 7, our directions are to solve each equation for y, show all work, and simplify our answers. So we're going to solve for y. So solving for y, those are our literal equations. Our literal equations, which we spent some time in Unit 1 doing. We spent some time reviewing. We've had a lesson on it just recently. So this should be something we are getting very familiar with. So let's begin. Number 7 says 4x minus 6y is equal to 36. We are solving for y. Our end goal when we are solving for y is to get something that looks like y equals whatever comes after that. We don't know right now, but we will once we solve it. So keep that in mind as we go through this process. We want something that looks like y equals. So my first step, I have this 4x minus 6y is equal to 36. My first step, I'm going to subtract this 4x from this side because that's my inverse operation. I have a positive 4x. To move it over, I need to subtract. So minus, I don't like that color for writing stuff out. I'm going to pick a different color. Minus 4x on both sides. There we go. And now what I have is this negative 6y is equal to. Now, this is a mistake I see a few students still making. We have a 36 minus a 4x. Are those two things like terms? Does that 36 have an x next to it? It doesn't. It's a constant. Does our 4 has a variable next to it. So our 36 is a constant, whereas our 4 is a coefficient. Those two things do not mush. We can't put those two things together. Those are not like terms. So we cannot make this 36 into a 32. This is going to stay 36 minus 4x. We can't combine these things because they are not like terms, okay? So now that we have that step done, I'm going to change this equation to black. There we go. Now that we have that step done, our next step, we still need to get this. Our goal is to get y equals something. We still don't have y equals. So what are we going to do to get to y equals? We're going to perform our inverse operation. What's going on between the 6 and this y? These two things are being multiplied together. And to undo that multiplication, we have to divide. So this side is going to be divided by negative 6, and this side is going to be divided by negative 6. All right. This negative 6y divided by negative 6, that's going to leave me with y. All right. So we're getting really close to what we want our final answer to look like. I want this equation to be black. All right, there we go. So this is going to be y equals, and then we have this 36 minus 4x. And all of this is over. I'm going to have to do it like this to get it all over. All of this is over 6, over negative 6. Okay. But we don't have this in parentheses because that means something very different. I just have to type it like that to get it to be all over my denominator. So now we have y is equal to 36 minus 4x all over negative 6. Now my last step in my direction says to simplify my answer. And I'm looking at this, and all these numbers are even. So that does mean there is some simplification that can happen. To do that, since these are both over the same number, they have the same denominator. One little thing, This is how I think about it in my head. I don't usually write this out, but I'll show you all my process for thinking about it. This is going to be 36 over negative 6 minus 4x over negative 6. Okay. Now that looks kind of funky, but if we were to actually go through the process of subtracting these two values, 36 over 6x, 36 over negative 6 minus 4x over negative 6, we would write them like this, okay? So this is just kind of an intermediate step. You don't always have to do this, but this may help. Our y is still equal to this, but this is just kind of a middle phase. This is on my process. This is on my road to simplifying. So once I have this, now I can actually begin the process of simplifying and have it seem simple. This 36 divided by a negative 6 is going to give me a negative 6. And then I have this minus this 4x over negative 6, or this plus a negative 4x over negative 6. These two things have a common term, which is 2. So this is going to be a plus. Negatives go away since this is a negative divided by a negative. And then we have this 2 over 3x. Okay. So now we have our term simplified. We've got it solved for and everything else. So this step here was just kind of my intermediate step to simplifying. This isn't my final answer. That went here, and then this came down to there. That's a bad arrow. All right, let's do another one. I won't do all of these because I do believe you all can do these. They're not too bad. I'm going to do number 10. Numbers 8 and 9 are very similar to the one I just did. Number 10 looks a little bit different. So number 10 says 1/4 x plus 5y equals 15. Now remember, my final answer, I want my final answer to look like y equals something, 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 whatever comes, whatever we get when we solve and simplify. Keep that in mind as we go through this process. My first step is going to be to undo my addition or subtraction. I have this 1/4 x being added to this 5y. This 1/4 x is positive. So the inverse of that is going to be to subtract 1/4 x to both sides, or from both sides, minus 1/4 x over here, minus 1/4 x over here. Those are going to go to 0. 1/4 x minus 1/4 x is 0. And what I'm left with is this 5y. Let's keep turning pink. I need this to be black. There we go. 5y is equal to 15 minus 1 over 4x. Once again, that 15 and that 1/4 x, those things are not like terms. Our 15 is a constant and our 1/4 is a coefficient. We can't just combine those two. That would not work out. That is not mathematically correct. We can't do that. So since we can't combine them, we just write them as is. 15 minus 1/4 x. And now we need to get rid of this 5y. So let's go ahead and multiply by the reciprocal. Okay, multiplying by the reciprocal is the same thing as dividing by that whole number. This first one I divided by the whole number. This one, to show you ways to do these, I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. So I'm going to multiply this side by 1/5, which is the reciprocal of 5. That's the same thing as dividing by 5. And then I'm going to multiply this side by 1/5. The whole side gets multiplied, or the whole side gets divided by 5, but that looks kind of funky to do it that way. What I have when I do this is I end up with y equals, because that 1/5 times that 5y gives me just y. Then 1/5 times 15, that's going to be 15 over 5, since we multiply straight across. 15 over 5 is just 3. That's not bad. And then we have minus, and then we have 1/5 times 1/4 x. when we multiply fractions, we multiply straight across. So our numerator gets multiplied to our numerator, our denominator gets multiplied to our denominator. And what we end up with is 1 over 20x. All right. And here we have it already simplified. We didn't have to do anything extra. So this one, sometimes doing it this way may be a bit simpler than doing it the way we did in number 9, where we divide it and then had to go through the process of simplifying. With this step, the way we did number 10, we don't have any simplifying left to do. All right, so if either of those two methods confused you, come to the Zoom chat, ask for help. Now let's go through number 11. 11 says 3x plus 9y is less than or equal to, you know what, I don't want to do 11. I think you guys can do that one, no problem. Let's do 12. 12 says 24 is less than, or I'm sorry, 24 is greater than 6y. I'm getting sleepy, y'all. 24 is greater than 6x minus 8y. So once again, our final goal, we want our final thing to look like, and this I do want in pink, is going to be y something greater than, less than, we'll figure it out, but we want y to be by itself, okay? Now remember, when we're working with inequalities, the process for solving inequalities is for the most part the same as equations, with the big difference that if we multiply or divide a negative number to both sides of this inequality sign, we must flip this sign. All right, so let's begin this one. We have the 6x minus 8y. The 6 is positive. I think this one confuses students oftentimes because we have a negative 8y and students want to add 6 to both sides, but that doesn't work, because if you added 6 to this side here, you get 12x, and then you'd have another 6x on this side. Doesn't work out. Instead, what we're going to do is the opposite operation. So this thing is positive, so we're going to subtract 6x from this side, 6x from this side. And if you want to do the line, that's cool too. Excuse me. This 6x goes to 0. 24 minus 6x, these are not like terms, so that just stays as 24 minus 6x. And then we still have is greater than negative 8y. Just trying to get this all lined up. All right, here we go. And now we have this negative 8y over. We don't have our y by itself like we wanted to. So to do that, I am going to perform my opposite operation, my inverse operation. And I'm going to divide this side by negative 8 and divide this side by negative 8. You could also, if you wanted to, multiply by the reciprocal, which is negative 1/8, on both sides. That's the same thing as doing what I'm doing. It's your preference. One step may look a little more confusing, but you don't have to do as much work simplifying later on. Another step you do. I'll go the long way because I think that may be less confusing to some students. So now we have this side divided by negative 8 and this side divided by negative 8. Now let's rewrite this. When I rewrite this, I'll take this time to split up my fraction. So it's 24 over negative 8 minus 6x over negative 8. And since I divided by a negative number to both sides across that inequality, on both sides of this inequality, I need to flip this sign. So this is no longer greater than, it is now less than. Ooh, that's not y. Less than y. Okay. And so now we simplify. 24 divided by negative x is going to give me, by negative 8, I'm sorry, 24 divided by negative 8 is going to give me a negative 3. So when I rewrite this, I want my y first, and y is greater than all that stuff. If you read it in reverse, going right to left, y is greater than blah, 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 blah. So that's how I'm going to start to write it. Y is greater than, and then I'm going to have this 24 over negative 8, which is negative 3. And then negative 6x over negative 8, that becomes a positive because a negative divided by a negative is a positive. And then 6 over 8, we can reduce that to 3 over 4. 3 over 4x. Okay. So there we have it. I have gone through the majority of the study guide, all of the first half, and a few problems of the second half. If you run into trouble doing the second half, once again, let me know. Come back to the Zoom chat, ask questions. And that's going to be it for our study guide review. If you would like to come in office hours, they are open from 2 to 2:30. If you are taking the bus home and you're not going to get home to like 2:25, but you still want to come to office hours, go ahead and send me a message in Schoology or an email to let me know, hey, Mr. Williams, I want to come to the office hours, but I'm getting home late, so that I know to keep my office hours open. Okay. And if you have any questions, ask. All right.